60 seconds to stream. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live on YouTube.
Thanks, Don. Bernice, if you want to call the meeting to order.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the December 9th special meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we could have a prayer, and then we will follow with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could just take a moment. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this time and this Christmas season, Lord. I just pray that you will turn our hearts to you and that so many will have peace and hope during this holiday. And we ask this in your holy name. Amen. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Miss Emmett, could I please have roll call?
Yes, Mrs. Fiorella,
Here.
Mr. Hoke,
Here.
Mr. Gogalski,
Here.
Mrs. DeCiato,
Here.
Mr. Enslin,
Here.
Mr. Gershi,
Here.
Mr. Gambita,
Here.
Mr. Auckland,
Here.
Mr. Wood,
Here.
Attorney Meir,
Here.
Dr. Barrett,
Here.
Dr. La Rosa,
Here.
and Ms. Emmett is also here. Mrs. Fiorella, you have 9 board members present.
Thank you very much. Matt, if you want to start with the discussion on 5, if you would.
Absolutely. The reason for, or one of the reasons for this meeting tonight is to determine our instructional mode from this point until Christmas break. December 23rd is our last day before break. So I know we had some in-depth conversation at the last board meeting, although it was somewhat unresolved. So we said we would wait to see what the numbers were as of this past Friday to make that determination. So the numbers did come out Friday afternoon. So we are again in the substantial range with the dashboard matrix, and also along with that, the county incident rate per 100,000 residents for the most recent 7 days is 255 with a positivity rate of 12.9%. So early on, for most of this school year, we were in the low category, and we were under the 5% threshold and well under the 100 rate incident rates per 100,000 residents. So, which is the big reason why we were able to remain in the instructional mode that we were in for that period of time. Now, we are still able to remain in that instructional mode in the fully in person. However, I did forward an email to the board from the Department of Education, which recommends, along with the Department of Health, a full remote learning until the community transmission rates return to moderate. Again, it states that this is not a mandate, and each LEA should continue to review their data and make the best decisions for their students, staff, and community. So I just wanted to give you a sense of where we're at and provide some other information if necessary. I did forward the county data from Wayne Memorial Hospital with the amount of tests done in the county and per zip code for your review. And I also have some district data with the amount of quarantines that we are currently experiencing. So as of today, we have 40 people total in quarantine, and we do have 5 positive cases throughout the district. We are also waiting to hear from several other individuals who are in quarantine that are currently being tested. So not sure if we'll have to further, again, we were made aware of 2 cases today, but I don't believe we have, because they were in quarantine. There are no close contacts because of one-day quarantine and when they tested positive with no symptoms. However, there are several others we are awaiting, which may result in further or more quarantines. So that's a brief summary of where we're at to this point. Again, following the Department of Education as well as the Department of Health's guidelines, we said we wait to get through this week to see where we're at and hopefully notify families as soon as possible if we were going to move to a fully virtual mode until December 23rd. And again, that brings us to break and then analyze the data over break to see where we're at if we want to move to a different instructional mode as of January 4th. So I guess with my recommendation again would be to follow the recommendation of PDE and Department of Health. I know there was some differing views on that, which I completely understand. I do completely understand and relate personally to families who, have childcare issues as well as some potential technology issues, which we would be working out. But again, the recommendation would be to move to a virtual mode for the 7.5 starting December 14th to the 23rd. So it would be 7.5 school days.
Matt, I just wanted to interrupt. This is Bernice Fiorella. We did discuss possibly going in person from the 14th through the 18th and doing virtual that Monday and Tuesday, which I believe is what, the 22nd?
The 23rd, which would be that half day. So that, there are.
So that would be a 21st and 22nd, correct?
21st, 2nd, yes, and 23rd. So 2.5 school days if we were to maintain in person next week.
Right.
And those, by doing that on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, would give us 2 full weeks to get us to January 4th. And again, looking at hopefully having some sort of idea by December 30th as to what mode we want to move towards thereafter. So, there are options. We could wait a week. We could do next Wednesday. There are a variety of options we could do here, but I would
really like to look at tonight, because I have to say, after last week's meeting, I really thought I would have been hung in the public. And I had more people call and say, I had men who I don't even know say, look, if we go virtual that week, I now have to sit at home and I'm the main breadwinner. Not only that, we have kids that their mothers are waitresses. They're sitting in the diner getting educated. And so for me, not only with Operation ELF, with our 200 family food distribution, there's so many other factors that go into this decision. So before everyone decides, I would really ask that they really take this heavy. It's a week before Christmas. Families are still trying to work, make extra money for their bills in a time where we've been hit hard as a community. I would really like to see that if we could go in person from the 14th through the 18th, and then do like you discussed, Matt, go virtual the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and that would give us our 2 weeks back at January 4th. So before everyone makes that decision, please take all of these things into consideration.
Bernice, I have some more data about the risks for COVID. It's just another, I'm just looking at, data. So for young children, the disease is less dangerous than a seasonal flu. This year, in the United States, more children have died from seasonal flu than from COVID by a factor of 2 or 3. Then there's a study by the CDC survey found that 1 1 in 4 young adults between 18 and 24 are seriously considered suicide. So, there's a collateral damage here too. And there's more and more reports of how learning is failing kids across the country. I mean, there's an article today that 400% increase in failures in Oregon. So we have to take that into consideration. I know it's a short-term solution, but I'm just afraid if we shut down, we'll never get back in school again for a while.
I agree. And Mike, if we even just say, hey, let's get in next week and take it week by week, I agree 100%.
This is Ethan Wood, and I completely agree that there are a lot of collateral, there's a lot of collateral damage to going virtual. And while I think our staff have done an amazing job going virtual, there's a definite difference between virtual education and in person. And that's, I think, is why we all wanted to be in person as long as we can. But there's a large amount of direct damage to that. The potential is out there, at least if we remain open. And we met last week. There were 5 COVID people in the hospital in Wayne County. Now there are 11. So if we stay open another week, and obviously a lot of this is independent of what we do, but we need to be part of the solution here. And I do understand that the collateral damage. My family will be directly affected by shutting down. But at the same time, I don't see how we get around the health considerations and the advice that we've gotten from the Department of Health and the Department of Education. And it's clear that the local health officials are also very concerned at this point. So I think we really should follow the advice that we've been given. There's a good reason why we should listen to this. And again, I don't think we should substitute our judgment for the public health experts.
Well, I have to say one thing, Ethan. I respect your opinion highly. But when we came in September, we knew the risk of coming in, every one of us. And parents wanted their kids educated. And they took that risk, and they took everything that needed to be done. Hand washing, mask, the whole 9, they did it. So the people who want their kids in school, have them in school. And the people that maybe have a grandparent living with them or absolutely have higher risk, they have had that choice to go virtual or online through cyber. Those options are still there. And I think the majority has proven that parents want children educated in the buildings. And if they don't feel safe, they are more than happy to virtual and cyber school. So those options are still in place.
I think a lot of parents, well, go ahead, whoever.
It's Jeff Gogolski, Ethan. Sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Just listening. One of the things that could be an option if we did decide to stay in school for that week of the 14th would be relax the rule of allowing the choice to go for a semester, to allow any parents who have students that are currently committed to the second period to, for this last week, have their kids go virtual, and basically leave it flexible for one or the other if we decide to stay open for instruction for the 14th.
And Jeff, I want to say, Matt and I did discuss that after our meeting. So that is absolutely an option as far as what Matt discussed with me. Now, whether things have changed, I'm not sure, but at the point in time we did discuss that was an option. You can correct me, Matt, if I'm wrong.
No,
Matt, have there been any people that have requested that already, that they wanted to switch from in-person to virtual?
well, not necessarily, since we gave them the option at the end of the marking period and to switch to the second marking period. There have been several due to quarantines that have requested that for a period of time, yes. But again, assuming that's temporary. Now, again, and Bernice, going back to what you commented, if we don't do the virtual starting on Monday, yes, I would recommend that we provide families that opportunity to switch between now and the 23rd to a complete virtual setting to respect any concerns they may have. But in giving them that option to keep their kids home if they're, for whatever reason, if they need to quarantine, or if they're just concerned about the numbers in the amount of cases taking place.
This is Cindy. When we say about students moving, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We're saying that we're giving students the opportunity to participate in Google Live, not switch to the VLA.
Correct.
That's correct. Yes.
That's the same as if they were quarantined. You're
Yes.
correct.
I just wanted to be clear with that so everybody understood, because when we say virtual, sometimes that means different things.
Thank you, Cindy. That's a good point. And yes, all students, if we move, well, I should say the students that are either in our Google Live setting or in person would still be learning synchronously live lessons with teachers teaching. We would open the building so that teachers would be utilizing their classrooms. There would still be some populations of students that would need to access the building for servicing needs as well. And we've been working on all of that in the background to prepare just in case. But we just want to lay out all the options for you and hopefully, for you guys to make the best decision possible.
Matt, my question also is for our teachers who have small children. Yes, they have the option to work from home, but how is that possible if they have small children who are also being virtual? So what do we do for that population?
Well, as with the rest of us, there comes a point in time where we have to manage it and do the best we can. There are options for teachers, for Families First Act to take advantage of that in the meantime, if need be. But we do want to be as accommodating as possible because we are low on staff. So we're on a case-by-case basis, we would have those teachers speak with the building principal. If we can accommodate their needs, we'll make every effort to. But at the same time, if there's a necessity for them to work from home for a period of time, we'll make sure we have parameters in place that, we're making sure we're providing the best experience possible considering the circumstances.
Sure. And I appreciate that. I just want to make sure all bases are covered this evening before anyone votes either way.
And if we do go virtual, I know that we had discussed it last time. The teachers will still have access to their rooms because I had heard that a teacher specifically asked about it and was told that they don't know the answer to that question.
Well, again, we've been working through different scenarios, and yes, we would want the teachers in working from their classrooms. The goal is to minimize the populations in the buildings and to provide as much space as possible. So, they would be working in solitary, I don't want to say solitary confinement, but in their own classrooms, to phrase it a little better. So there would be, obviously proper distancing and all of that. Now, again, there would be some students that need to access the facilities for various reasons. So we will be bringing those students in and our staff will be working with them. But again, we'd be working within the safety parameters that we have been from the beginning.
Matt, another issue is on the back end of the holidays. So we go Google Classroom for the last week and a half, or if we decide just that last few days, there's other school districts who have been pushing virtual going into the new year. And if we were to have to decide that over holiday break, would that give the teachers and the students enough time to be ready to continue to go virtual into the new year? Without a decision being made sooner, that is.
If the decision is to remain virtual after the holiday, I mean, we have everything in place for that to go already. So again, we would bring the staff in so that they may work from their classrooms and, you know, provide any material or gather any materials that we may need to send home, either via mail or even deliver ourselves if need be. So that we would have that capability.
This is
Okay.
Cindy. So we have continuously expressed to staff, we need to be able to switch modes at a moment's notice. So like Matt said, they would have access to their classroom, whether it's December 14th through the 18th through the 23rd, or just the 21st through the 23rd. And again, we would reinforce to them, we really need to be thinking about that period after the break so that they are prepared and ready to continue in whatever mode we are in at that time.
I make a comment. I tend to agree with Mr. Wood. I was wondering if Attorney Meir could remind us of the possible consequences of ignoring the recommendations of the Department of Health and PDE.
Sure, Bill, I'd be happy to. Unfortunately, it puts our school district, if we remain open, at a tremendous risk because of what the PDE is telling us we have to do with this attestation. It's essentially saying we've been put on notice that our transmission level in Wayne County is substantial, and therefore we should go virtual. Yet they're requiring us to say, hey, we'll take it on our backs and move forward because we think we have the controls in place to control the spread. So, you know, I agree with what Bernice is saying and Mike's saying, and I agree with what Ethan and Bill are saying. It's a very tough call. But my job is to advise you on our liability, and it makes me very nervous if we remain in person because of that. And I hate that. I hate running in fear of liability. But
Matt,
the
can I just ask?
the legislature tried to, I'm sorry, Bernice,
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
the legislature tried to cover us, and they did a good job. Johnny Fritz, Mike Pfeiffer, they passed a law that said we'd be protected if we still stayed in person. Governor Wolf vetoed it. So had he not vetoed it, I would be saying, we're okay, guys. But at this stage, ethically and professionally, for me to recommend that you're going to be okay, I can't do that. So go ahead, Bernice. Sorry I interrupted.
And Matt, I'm sorry, you know, sometimes working the mute button, forgive me. But I understand absolutely the risk here. I also believe at this point we pick our poison because the number of special ed lawsuits that we get yearly, I believe at this point in time, we have more of a potential to have more special ed lawsuits than a potential for a COVID lawsuit at this point. So honestly, the board has to pick their poison because we're going to be sued one way or the other, in my opinion.
Matt Meir, that is. Jeff Gogolski here. A question is, what if we did relax the rules and allow the parents to make the decision for their student to go for that upcoming week? And is it possible, and you don't have to give me an answer, but if we threw out a hold harmless agreement that parents would have to sign as a waiver, which would hopefully add an added layer of protection. Is that possible? And
Yes, Jeff, we've used a COVID waiver, I believe, with our fall sports program. So that is something that would add an additional layer of protection for us. But as I've stated, whenever we talk about this stuff, lawyers are going to sue everybody.
sure.
Whether they're going to win or not, I can't tell you that. But I'm just saying, we've seen that. So you could do that. If you're going to we're going to open it up. We give you, the parents, the option to keep your kid home, and we'll provide, all materials and everything we need to do. But if you want to send them to in person, we're going to have a COVID waiver. A trickier element to that, not regarding the students, is our teachers, support staff, and all of that. So
Sure.
yes, from a student standpoint, we could get that with the parents, but I don't know if a teacher or a support staff gets really sick. What are we going to do there?
Right. And it would be a union issue, I'm sure. So they would have to sign
Absolutely.
off on it as well. Yep.
Absolutely.
Understood.
That
Okay.
would be appropriate. So that would just.
Yeah, that would.
I
squash
also,
that, I'm sure.
I also question what message it sends to the community and to our staff that we are disregarding the recommendations of the people who know the most about this, and are requiring our staff to be there to show up to work. And as far as the students go, even if there's some kind of liability waiver, we're still sending the message that it's safe enough to have the buildings open. And people are going to interpret that a certain way. So I think that the flip side of, if we don't follow the Department of Health's advice, we're more exposed to legal liability. If we do follow their advice, the corollary is that we're much less exposed, because if we do get sued by somebody, if that does happen, we can point to the fact that we were following the recommendations.
I'd like to chime in. I'd like to chime in here too. I think from everything that I've read and seen, I believe interpersonal contact is the primary way to spread this. So when we're removing people from that large group setting, I think we're helping to minimize for the whole area. So I'm torn too, because I dislike this whole thing. I think arbitrarily setting dates, the virus doesn't know if it's Monday or Friday or next week or this week. If the data is showing the numbers are going up, I think the prudent thing to do is for us to try to help mitigate that however we can. And if that means closing down and trying to keep it as brief as possible, I'm going to support the recommendations of the professionals that we put in place.
I think too, it's a terrible thing. It really is. And as Bernice pointed out earlier, all of the people who are going to have consequences, absolutely, it's a real problem. I think back to March when all of a sudden the schools closed and it was required that they close, and people went for the rest of the school year without being there, and they survived and did it. I know that doesn't make it good. It doesn't make it any more palatable. But we're talking a few extra days here, and what is the sensible, safe thing to do is the question.
Attorney Meager, I have a question in regards to if the teachers do go into the classrooms and we are virtual, can we still be held liable for that as well?
Well, I don't know if we could be held liable, Dana. I think it would be, to a lesser extent, it would be hard for somebody to make the argument if there's one teacher going into a classroom by themselves with nobody else in there, that it'd be a more challenging argument for somebody to make that we caused them to get sick when they were in a room by themselves. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
And I agree with just from what I know and personal experience, it appears that we've talked about this before, the teachers, most of them, I think, prefer to teach from their classroom. I think they have better resources there. And I think the majority of them are willing to do that. But again, we do give them the option. Am I correct there, Mr. Superintendent?
Well, again, it would be case by case because we have to, determine to what extent we can make the accommodations for each person. So again, the expectation would be that the teachers work from their classrooms.
Well, things, listen, everybody. This is probably one of the hardest decisions that we've all had to make. I can't remember one that I was so torn over in the last week, let's just say. I have a hard time not agreeing with Ethan or Matt Muir. But in the same token, I guess, and I don't know how to say this, and I'll say this lightly, I've never been one to be afraid to make a decision against something too. I guess the one thing that I want to be clear on is, are we giving everybody the option to do whatever they want to do? And if we are, then how could we be sued? I guess that's the part where I'm not quite understanding the whole thing. Can somebody just clear that up a little bit better?
I think what they were saying was that they would take the waiver would cover for the students because we would be giving them that option. But if a teacher catches it from a student or from somebody else, they can sue us because you're not giving them an option. They have to come in if we go in.
But they do have the option. It's family leave or personal days. We're asking for 1 week. That's it, 1 week. And I just would like to remind everyone, the survival rate is 99.7. So.
Right, and I agree wholeheartedly that it's a really small number, but if we have that one person, I don't want to be the guy that said you have to go when we have other options.
Well, I would like to say let's continue as is and make those decisions on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to taking out a whole week, because a week is a big chunk. I would like to see that if we go in for that week and take it on a case-by-case basis and continue as we have been.
Bernice, I have also what the DOH's website to look at the flu, number of cases for flu, and I'll share with everybody in the email. It's very stark. Actually, the flu went away this year based on data from the last 3 years. I know we're going to get sued and disagree. That's fine, but I just want to, present the data. I'm just looking at the website, CCD and all these websites. So we're getting direct information right from the government. So I'll share the chart. It's a little choppy. I printed it out, but I'll send you a screenshot and a link to it.
Thank you. I think everyone's mind is pretty much made up. And I don't think anything is going to be said that's going to sway anybody. So I guess, Matt, at this point, if nobody has anything else to say, I think we should just say yay or nay at this point.
All right, do you need a motion for that?
May I just add one thing before that happens? I know we're talking a lot about liability issues and concerns, and yes, we definitely try to mitigate that by all means. But at the same time, I think when it comes down to it, ultimately we have to decide what's the best for our students and staff, regardless of what your decision is.
And that's across the board. That's food, that's families that need to work. That's now bringing in grandparents to watch the children. That's everything across the board. So let's all keep that in mind.
I would just like to add one last thing, and this, don't hold me to this, but it'll probably be the last thing I say. If you need your house fixed, you go to a contractor. If you need legal advice, you go to a lawyer. If you need advice on whether it's safe to operate a school during a pandemic, then you listen to public health officials. And at the bottom line is the safety of the students and the staff. And I feel strongly that we should follow their advice.
Yep, I'll make the motion, if I can, that we follow the advice of the superintendent and close whatever date or time he feels is necessary according to the data provided.
Rose, could we have a roll call vote on that, please? Because I'd like to have it virtual the 21st as opposed to the 14th. So
I guess that's something we should specify also, because is that going to be indefinite, or are we going to take it from this point to the 23rd?
Through the initial date, the January 4th date, and then we can revisit. Is that okay? Is that satisfactory?
So then going with the recommendation of the 14th through the 23rd virtual, and then reassess on the 4th, or for the 4th.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll second that motion.
okay, that motion was made by Mr. Hoke and then seconded by Mr. Wood. Rose, could we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Yes.
Hold on, sorry. So we're going virtual on the right before Christmas, right? Those 2.5.
No, this motion is to go virtual the 14th, which I was hoping that we could have went virtual on the 21st. So this is to go virtual as of Monday.
Okay.
Okay.
But wait a second. So just to be clear though, if that doesn't pass, then we should have another motion as to what the alternative is. Do we remain in person the entire time, or do we set alternate dates?
Well, let's see if that one passes first, and then we'll go to the second. Is that okay, Matt?
Yeah, it's a point of order from Matt Muir. I just don't want the dates to get screwed up. Is the starting date of virtual the 14th?
Yes.
Monday?
That is Mr. Hoke's motion. That is Mr. Hoke's motion, yes.
Okay, I'm clear. Thank you.
All right, so we have motion and we have a second. I'll do roll call.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Mrs. Fiorella,
I'm a no.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Mr. Gogalski,
No.
Mrs. DeCiato,
No.
Mr. Enslin,
Yes.
Mr. Gershi,
I mean, yes.
Mr. Gambita,
No.
Mr. Auckland,
No.
and Mr. Wood.
Yes.
All right, we have 5 noes and 4 yeses, if I counted that right. Am I right?
You are correct on that, Miss Emmett.
Okay.
So now we would need a second motion. And Matt, we could clear up those dates.
I'd like to pass a motion. This is Dana DeCiato, to go in person for the next week. So the 14th through the 18th, and virtual the 19th or the 20th, the 21st, and it's the 21st, 22nd, 23rd of December.
I will second that motion.
Sorry.
No, you're good, Dana. So that motion does state that we will be in person the 14th through the 18th, and we will be virtual the 21st, the 22nd, and 23rd. That motion was made by Mrs. DeCiato and seconded by myself. Could we have another roll call vote on that? Mrs. Emmett, please.
Mrs. Fiorella,
I am a yes.
Mr. Hoke,
No.
Mr. Gogalski,
Yes.
Mrs. DeCiato,
Yes.
Mr. Enslin,
No.
Mr. Gershi,
No.
Mr. Gambita,
Yes.
Mr. Auckland,
Yes.
and Mr. Wood.
No.
Mrs. Fiorelli, you do have 5 yes votes, and I believe that motion carries.
Thank you, Miss Emmett. Mr. Barrett, is there anything you would like to add on that before we go to the next motion?
With that vote passing, then we'll begin to put some informational items together for families in order to prepare for those days, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd being virtual. So we'll speak administratively this week and begin to distribute information as soon as possible.
Great, thank you for that, Matt.
Hey,
Go
Bernice,
ahead.
just real quick, this week that we are in, if I'm right, this was going to be the week that what Matt just said that everybody would prepare for, right? So basically we're just putting another week ahead,
Correct.
right? Just to put it plainly. Okay.
Okay, could we kindly have a motion for number 6 there, which is the district substitute list?
I recommend the Board of Education approve the following personnel to be added to the district substitute list for the 2020-2021 school year per Certification Act 2434, 151, 114, 153, and 168 guidelines. Employment eligibility verification, U.S. Department of Justice, contingent upon receipt of employment paperwork. Number 1, Ashlyn Anderson, area guest teacher. And number 2, Alvea Scarfalato, area of certification, pending certification, early childhood pre-K through 4, special education pre-K through 8.
I second it.
That motion was made by Mr. Hoke and then seconded by Mr. Gambita. Are there any questions or comments on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstaining? That motion does pass. Rose, is there anyone from the public that had comment?
No, I've been monitoring the email account throughout the meeting, and there has been no questions that came in during the meeting.
Okay. Is there anyone that has any further business?
It's just Matt Muir. There was discussion about that COVID waiver. Is the administration going to modify the one we use for fall sports and advise, I guess, the parents that if they are going to send them, they will have to review that and sign it?
I'm going to jump in, Matt. I'm sorry. I think we may want to add another motion so that we can relax the mandate for students to go that week. Otherwise, I don't know really how warranted that waiver is going to be.
Right, because you can't change it during the quarters, right? I get it.
Correct.
So
I think another motion should be laid for that.
Okay.
But just to be clear, that was more of a practice that we put in place, a procedure just to minimize the amount of kids fluctuating in and out to make it much more manageable for our staff to monitor and for our teachers to keep on top of things from a day-to-day basis. So, I mean, we could do that without the waiver or without the motion.
Can something be put out onto the website that basically at this point gives the parents notice that there is an option for that following week to do this? And then that way everybody's been put on notice and they now have that choice. I think that should happen.
I'll have a notice out by Friday to the families, and we'll just have to figure out an effective means of communicating that to the buildings.
Jeff, this is Cindy too. I just want to reassure everyone that if a parent or family has called about these 2 weeks, because we've kind of been talking about this as a district, building principals have worked with those families and have made an exception for them to move from in-person instruction to the Google Classroom now through the Christmas break.
Okay, great.
So that,
Cindy,
I just wanted everybody to know that's already happening with those families that have requested that for whatever reason.
Thank you.
That's great, Cindy. It's Matt Muir again. Jeff makes a good point. We need to blast that out there that everybody has the option. We need to put everybody on notice that they all have the option and can switch right now. They don't have to request it. You know, they have the option at this point.
Can it go out via like an email or a text message versus being put on the website, just so that we ensure that it's being broadcast to every person that needs to be getting it?
Yes, of course. We'll put that out as we do notifications for snow days or whatever it might be with our Blackboard Connect system. So everybody will get the notice. Please contact your building principal or guidance counselor moving forward. And again, we'll specify that it is for next week, the week of the 14th. And then we will be virtual starting the 21st to the 23rd. And then we'll reassess the situation for January 4th into what instructional mode we'll move forward with at that point.
Okay, any other business? Everybody good? Okay, can I have motion for an adjournment, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn, Madam President.
All right, Mr. Hope, thank you. And thank you everyone for the discussion. And thank you,
And-
Matt, and administration.
And I think, Matt, you want to call executive session, is that correct?
Please, just
What
briefly,
happened
if we could stop the recording and keep the Zoom up and running for a few minutes.
Thank you, Rose,